Thank you all. Our next speaker is Susan Reilly. She was appointed Director of IReL in 2022. And previous to that, she had worked as Associate Director at UCD. Much of her career has focused on the provision of access to information in the digital age, working with digital libraries, copyright and open science in the Netherlands, Qatar and Ireland. She is currently co-chair of the IFLA Open Access Task Force and of the LIR Copyright Working Group. And we're really, really happy that you're here with us today. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to stay here because I think this is where people online can see me. I do really want to be out there so I can engage more with people. Hi, everyone. I'm Susan Reilly. I'm the Director of the Irish Research e-Library. Can you all hear me okay back there? Yeah, great. Thank you so much for inviting me today. It was actually a great opportunity to reflect on the Irish Research e-Library and how far it's come. And I think I asked that question to Natalia about the network because I think there's lots of parallels between the Irish Research e-Library and Open Air. And I think if I look back on the history of IReL, the one takeaway I have looking forward is the importance of the network and the importance of collaboration. And infrastructures like IReL, infrastructures like Open Air, we're nothing without that network. And I hope that that's what you take away from today, because certainly in my reflections, looking back on the foundations of IReL, that is something that I am keeping in mind, looking forward to where we're going. So today I'm going to look at and remind some of you about how IReL got started, IReL's membership as it is today, how we're funded, and I'm going to cover our governance as well, and then looking forward, looking at where we are now and where we're moving towards in the Irish research landscape. So first of all, the foundation of IReL. Next year, we're going to be celebrating 20 years in existence. So IReL was founded in 2004. So I did a quick Google image search for Ireland 2004. And the whole first page of those images was Roy Keane. Just to remind you, cast your mind back 20 years ago. Ireland was at the height of the Celtic Tiger. We were awash with money. We were investing in infrastructure, and we had one of the best football players in the world playing for our football team, soccer team. And I think that's significant because, you know, university libraries at the time were not short of funding, that they were well resourced, and yet they decided to work together and to seize an opportunity to collaborate and establish this joint project that was IReL. And actually the group that established IReL was called the Irish University Library Collaboration Centre. That's the IUA University Libraries. They put forward a proposal for IReL in 2004 for shared resources with an STM focus on biotech and IT. So essentially a consortium that would purchase access to STM resources. And this project was hugely successful, so successful that in 2006, a new project was launched to support access to resources in the humanities and social sciences, again, during the Celtic Tiger. And this project ended in 2009. And I do think that's significant because we know when the Celtic Tiger ended, that libraries had a huge cut in their budgets, up to 60%. But IReL managed to make it through that period, I think largely because the libraries had proven the value for money that IReL delivered, had explicitly set out to collect data on the impact of IReL, and were able to make the case for it. And I do wonder where we would be today if Irish libraries hadn't worked together to establish IReL. and to set up a national infrastructure that was able to prove its worth during difficult times. So the founding principles of IReL, well, they were that the resources that IReL provided access to must be available to all students and staff of IReL institutions. It was an all-in model, so the resources were selected based on the greatest demand across all institutions. So it was resources that every institution needed access to. And value for money was a central consideration for IReL. So IReL is unusual as a licensing consortium in that we are centrally funded. We're not paid for directly by the libraries, although that is changing a little bit. Historically, we were project-based, much like Open Air started as a project, IReL started as a project. In 2021, we got additional funding to pursue transformative agreements to include open access in our deals with publishers. And this has been a significant game changer for IReL and what we do and the way we see ourselves. Newer members in IReL are what we call pay to play, or they pay for the resources that they have, pay directly for the resources that they have access to rather than being centrally funded. And our long-term goal in terms of sustainability is to secure dedicated central funding for all IReL activities. We want an IReL budget line, not funding from projects. So we have 17 members today. We started out with 7 members, and that was the IUA libraries. The Royal College of Surgeons Ireland joined later on. Teagasc is also a member, and TU Dublin joined in 2020, I think. From 2022, all of the new technical universities signed up to IReL, and the Institutes of Technology, and we're working with them to onboard them onto all IReL resources. Now, staffing and governance is not the most exciting topic, but I think, you know, you're all stakeholders in IReL, and I think as stakeholders and part of our network, you're entitled and should know what happens under the hood in IReL. So this is the governance that used to be in place and is more in place at IReL. So IReL was actually Irish University Libraries Collaboration Centre project, and Maynooth University was the host of the IULCC. And the IULCC was directed by the Maynooth University librarian. Today, because IReL has a larger membership, including the TUs, it now is, I think, independent of the IULCC, still hosted by Maynooth University, but obviously I am the director of IReL. We still have a governance committee, which is largely made up of our funders and representatives from our members. The IULCC executive, which was the library directors of the original members, have now stepped back, and that the kind of the executive function of IReL is run by our office. For this year, we still have the IReL Steering Committee, who we are enormously grateful to. These are the people who engage in negotiations with us. These are the people who review our resources for value for money. These are the people who promote IReL at institutional level. We also had, and some of you were members of, the IReL monitoring group. This group was enormously valuable in making the case for IReL, gathering the data that proved IReL's value for money, giving us insight into how IReL resources were used. This monitoring group has been stood down because we now have a dedicated data analyst in the IReL office who does the work of that group, but also the type of data that we're looking at. The nature of it has changed with the introduction of our open access agreements. So we're not just looking at the usage of resources, we're actually looking at the publications that we've supported through our agreements. So this is our new simplified governance, but this is, I would say, our transitional governance. We do aim to change this more when our funding changes. So you can see our governing board is responsible for the governance of IReL, the funding and budget approval, strategy approval, strategic direction, and any projects that we pursue. Maynooth University is still the host of IReL, if not the host of the IULCC, and manages IReL finances, and we are hugely grateful to the university for hosting us, providing us with office space, support, and for representing us at national level as well and making the case for IReL. We will, from next year, be establishing an advisory committee. IReL is in a state of change, and we need experts from across the sector to help guide us on policy, strategy, what services we should be developing, and how we should be engaging our stakeholders. And here we have a new negotiations group, which will be similar to the IReL steering committee. It will be responsible for negotiating resources on behalf of memberships. It's just going to be smaller because we can't have a representative from every single member on that group. So that is our governance as it is from 2024. So looking at where we are now and the future and our place in the Irish research landscape. So still looking back a little bit, but 2019, I think because of COVID, still seems like only yesterday. In 2019, there was a strategic review of IReL carried out by the HEA. And this review found that IReL is considered by all stakeholders to be an important and effective part of the infrastructure of higher education and research in Ireland. And this is significant because IReL started as a project and now it's viewed as essential infrastructure underpinning research and learning. Recommendations from the report included that the procurement of e-journals at national consortium level should not only be continued but be expanded as resources permit, that membership of IReL should be expanded on a phased basis to enable wider sharing of the benefits of membership. That IReL should adopt a tiered model. So IReL is an all-in consortium, but there is potential for it also to be a buyer's club with different levels of access and associated costs for different types of members. Our long-term strategic aim should be clearly identified at national level to inform our mission and our future negotiation strategy, especially taking into account open research policy nationally and internationally. And a review of the IReL catalogue was recommended to consider the needs of current and new potential members. And that's something we're going to do next year, now that we have the TUs on board, is to look at the relevance of the resources that we are subscribed to and what direction we're moving in. And IReL's governance structure should be simplified and moved from a representative model to a competence-based model. So we have simplified the governance structure. Have we moved from a representative model? Not quite, because our funding is not in the place that it needs to be in terms of sustainability for us to be purely for our governance to be purely competence-based, but that's what we're moving towards. So what is the national context? 2022 was a significant year for us in that two major policy events occurred. One is the launch of the government's strategy on research and innovation, Impact 2030, and the other is the National Open Research Forum roadmap. So these are Impact 2030 really, I suppose, helps set the scene for IReL and shows how IReL, which was originally set up to support and realize research excellence by providing access to the best and highest quality research. And research excellence, I suppose, maybe understood in kind of the most conservative sense, citations, high impact factor, that kind of thing, to impact, and this is the national direction. So moving to the impact of research and innovation on our economy, society, and the environment, to research and innovation structures on excellence and outcomes, to impact of innovation on enterprise success, and the impact of talent at the centre of the research and innovation ecosystem. And within a national, EU, and global context. So where is IReL in all of this? We see ourselves in point 2, impact on research and innovation structures, the impact of research and innovation structures on excellence and outcomes. So IReL is a research infrastructure supporting excellence and outcomes. We support research to be more impactful by making it open access, so it's available to the widest possible cohort, not just in academia, but in society and in enterprise. We support talent, of course, by supporting their publishing, but also through ORCID, which is essentially allows us to individuals to get credit and track their research output. And I think also by supporting open access and supporting infrastructure like ORCID and DataCite, we are making Irish research more visible globally. So the National Action Plan for Open Research was launched in 2022, and there's one, I guess, target in the North Plan that is something that IReL has been looking for. And that's the target is that by 2030, Ireland will have implemented a sustainable and inclusive course for achieving 100% open access to research publications. Bear in mind that we got funding for transformative agreements before this action plan was launched. So we obviously had some sort of mandate to pursue open access, but we didn't have a target. Now there's a national target, and IReL is key in helping to achieve that target by 2030. And I've highlighted sustainable and inclusive here because I think IReL helps to achieve both. We've proven that we deliver value for money through collaboration, and we can be inclusive. Researchers who publish open access through IReL do not have to have a grant to support their open access publishing. And we can also aim to put in place open access options that are more inclusive to different disciplines or more supportive of local publishing activity. So we've been supporting our way through what we call transformative agreements since 2020. We have 22 active TAs. We also have fully open access agreements with PLOS. We support Scope 3 and SCOS as well. So how am I doing for time? A quick one on the benefits of transformative agreements. Now, I know that there are criticisms of transformative agreements, and I think often the emphasis is on what does transformative mean and what are we transforming? I don't think we can transform the big publishers' goal of making as much profit as possible, but we can help researchers to choose open access, and we can transform where our funding goes, where we spend our money, moving it from paying for subscriptions, for example, to paying for open access, and then open up who it is we pay for open access. But the immediate benefits are shifting away from paying for everything we might read to everything we actually publish. Also, it allows us to have centralized monitoring of our investment in scholarly publishing through IReL. It's definitely reduced admin for researchers. It supports funder compliance and making our outputs open access does increase the impact and visibility of Irish research. So in 2021, IReL supported over 1,800 articles and had deals with 19 publishers. By 2022, we were supporting over 2,000 articles, plus the 955 through the Science Direct Agreement, and we had deals with 23 publishers. We also published 53 articles with PLOS. So that's a big increase already in a year. Because we've only been pursuing TAs for 2 years, we can't really ourselves measure the impact, but we can draw on others' assessment of their impact. So the Royal Society looked at their transformative agreements, and they found that the articles that were made open access under TAs were cited more, had higher altimetric scores, and significantly more downloads than those that remained behind paywalls. One of our members, the Royal College of Surgeons Ireland, has looked at the impact of open access and kind of indirectly at the impact of IReL. So since the launch of RTAs, their percentage of OA publications is up from 56 to 70%. Their authored publications, which are available OA, receive on average nearly 3 times as many citations as those that are not. And their articles that are not OA are underperforming in terms of citations compared to the world average. This is, I think, a lovely example of the impact of open access. And this is an article that was published under transformative agreements. And it's actually looking at the importance of play, well, not play, but schoolyards and play areas in school. And this is something that, I mean, I won't say how old I am, but schoolyards pretty much look the same now as they did when I was using them, which is kind of sad when education has completely changed. So it does some research into the impact of improving schoolyards. And this is the kind of research that who benefits the most from having access to it? Teachers, schools themselves. So it makes no sense for this research to be behind a paywall. And this this research was made open access, not through an IReL deal, but actually through a Swedish deal because the lead author is Swedish. And it just shows the reciprocity. We're working in a global context. And the main thing is that this research, which is really most beneficial to practitioners, is made open access and published in the Irish Times. So where we are internationally with our open access agreements, actually the United Kingdom has jumped just above us. So we're 6th in the world in terms of the percentage of articles that are made open, the percentage of output for IReL institutions that's made open access under our agreements. Just breaking it down, so you can see that 65% of our output from corresponding authors in IReL institutions is covered, and 15% is covered by gold open access. So 20% still to go there in terms of corresponding author to articles from our member institutions. Going back to Impact 2030, how do you measure impact? Well, first of all, you've got to have the trustworthy research infrastructure underpinning the measurement of impact. And that's why IReL supports the ORCID consortium, so supporting researchers to build their research profile, get credit for their research outputs, and supporting institutions to monitor their research outputs outputs and the impact of those. 5 minutes left, no problem. We're also from 2024 taking on DataCite from UCD Library, who established the National DataCite Consortium. Again, DataCite supports the creation of persistent identifiers for research objects. So supporting the findability, accessibility, and reusability of research objects, and therefore increasing the impact and global visibility of our research. And speaking further about measuring impact, Natalia mentioned the National Open Access Monitor. IReL is leading the work on the development of the National Open Access Monitor. It seemed like a no-brainer for us because key to our work now is actually analysing national research output so we can understand where best to put our effort in terms of realising open access. So this is the work we needed to do anyway, and many of you will probably have already engaged with this. We've done several surveys to define what we mean by open access, to define what the National Open Access Monitor should look like, what it should measure, what kind of use cases there are, because you will have the funder view, the institutional view, and other views of the measurement of open access. You want data in real time, but also longitudinal data to show, look back and say, this is where we've come from, and this is how far we've come, and maybe adjust and say, this is where we're going, much like our discussions today. So the delivery, OpenAIRE is leading the technical work on this, as Natalia said, and the delivery date should be November 2024, so watch this space. And that, I think, is me done, hopefully on time, and I'm very grateful for being invited today and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Two, I'm just creating.
Yeah, let's push it down and I work with lots. My question is actually in light of that HEA, when we talk about expanding your membership, I'm just wondering, in the plans in whole area, do you have a vision of what kind of membership base you go to have? In that sense.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the first priority is, and because it's a national priority, is to build up the capacity of the technical universities, is to onboard the TUs into IReL. And that actually is a huge amount of work in terms of expanding our agreements. And actually, we've spent a lot of time training the members there, working with them directly so they can, make the resources discoverable. So that's the first priority. The second priority is actually to get IReL on a sustainable footing. So I've mentioned that our origins are project funding, and we need to be funded as a research infrastructure before we expand our membership. And I think at that point, we'd love to expand our membership straight away because we have actually a waiting list of people, institutions that want to join. We have to make sure that we all have a common goal in terms of supporting research and learning. I think learning, research led learning. So that would be kind of what we're looking at, is do these institutions support research? And then the other question that we will be seeking to answer is, do they have the capacity to engage in IReL? Because there are smaller research institutions that actually maybe have only one librarian, they don't have any resources librarian, and it's not plug and play with IReL. You have to have somebody locally who can support the discovery of the resources there. So first priority is the TUs and getting them on a sustainable footing, and all of IReL on a sustainable footing. And then the second priority is to engage with others who are interested in joining IReL and agree kind of a common goal and, you know, a bar for the kind of local capacity required.
Do you have any questions?
Hi, my name is Jennifer. And just hearing a lot about institutional access. And I'm really wondering, is there a place in the manner for, I guess, I'm wondering if libraries acting as publishers in the future, and also independent researchers in Ireland or who are from Ireland, who are doing research that aren't attached to any institution. You know, in the future, is there going to be capacity, as I said, in Ireland for those researchers to get their research open access? Because there are people who research, but it's kind of maybe on their own websites or, you know, it's voluntary bodies, they don't have that.
Great question. So, you know, for us, transformative agreements are temporary and transitional. And we're at the point now where we have to think of what's beyond that. And there's, you know, one key thing that's going to inform this is the North Action Plan, which, you know, has to figure out how we get to 100% open access. So we see ourselves as an enabler of that. And I think however we fund open access, you know, to get to that 100%, because those stakeholders you mentioned are key to getting to that 100%, has to address that. So I can't say exactly how it's going to work, but I could see as we move our funding to, as we start to look at our spend on open access, we can look at also the different business models that we can support for open access. So do we support library publishing? Do we support things like, you know, Research Europe that are more inclusive, potentially more inclusive? Because I did highlight the inclusive in the North target. So we haven't figured it out how to get there, but that's where we want to get. Yeah.